If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You just go again. If I want something to happen, it's on me. And I know there's a lot of other people like that as well, but there's no handouts, there's no legs up, there's no advantages or anything like that. It's through pure hard work. And that's what I felt at Google was shown. It was like, if you want this, this can happen. It's not written in the black and white, but you work it and you earn that commission and then you'll achieve your target essentially.
Did you spend time in the US?
Yes, we did. So when we decided to take Equalution full time, we actually quit Google and we took a one-way ticket to Silicon Valley, and we thought that was where we were going to build the app. We were very naive, but we thought we were going to do one of three things: either find a CTO, find an investor, or just learn how to build an app, because we had no idea.
Were you happy running Equalution a lot of the time?
No, I wasn't happy because I didn't have a life outside of that business. For that reason, I didn't know myself. I didn't experience a lot. It was, that business was my whole existence. And a lot of people ask now, like, would you go back and change it? Absolutely not, because I have lived a really great life now in my 30s because of what I did in my 20s. It was like the work that I put in my 20s has now paid off in my 30s. So yeah, I think it's played a big role, but at the time was a happy no. That's a bit sad.
For anyone listening to this who is looking to start a business, you know, they're passionate about the idea, they might have experienced the problem or they're looking to solve a problem. What's your advice to them getting started around just, I think, mindset around giving it a go?
I think...
Jade, what's the hardest thing you've had to do in order to become the person you are today?
I think take a pause when things don't feel right, but they could keep going as they're going, and just stop and just trust that intuition and just say, okay, I've got to reassess. And that usually means that you've outgrown something or there's a pivot coming or whatnot. But I think just taking that minute just to redirect is probably the most challenging thing
I love it.
I've done.
When I say the word success with where you are today in your life, what does that mean to you?
It's a little bit more holistic than what I probably would have thought if you asked me that question, say 5 years ago, in like the depths of my like growth trajectory sort of thing. I think success now is a full throttle happiness. It's just like peace in what I'm doing work-wise. It's connection to family and friends. And there have been times in my journey where I've been completely disconnected for reasons that, you know, my head is down and my bum is up type thing. So I think right now it's just an overall balance. It's a peace and it's a fulfillment. And also shit's working as well. It's like you're doing well at your job. Remuneration is good on the other side of that. It's like everything is working.
Nice. So retrospectively, like looking back,
yeah.
Let's say when you were getting Equalution off the ground,
yeah.
What did success mean then?
I think it was financially attached, to be honest. I think it was like attached with when we achieved this many subscribers or reach this many, you know, users and have this much in the bank and this much MRR, like that sort of thing. I think it was very much geared towards that. And then I think hitting all those milestones quickly made me realize that it's not in fact all about that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, let's rewind back like early 20s,
yeah.
like well, after school.
Yes.
Like where were you like professionally, like what were you doing and what were you looking to do?
I was four-fifths of a lawyer. So I enrolled into a law degree at Wollongong University, and I studied for about 4 out of the 5 years of the degree. I did a double degree in law and media and communications, and I majored in journalism. So already I think that says, girl, you're so confused. You don't know what you're doing. And I really didn't. Like I was just bright and I did what I thought I had to do. And then my now co-founder at the time, just someone I went to school with, ended up getting me the job at Google. So I ended up moving into Google and working in the marketing space there, which was really cool.
You strike me as like a savage. You would have been like a savage litigator in a courtroom.
I feel so, yes. My later years have taught me I would have been quite good at that, I think.
Yeah, I see that. Let's talk about Google. Like how did Google set you up for like founding your first company?
I think for both my co-founder and I, there was a lot of attraction to the work culture, and I think the way that from a staff perspective, you were enthused for the brand in general. So there was a lot of learnings there that we later implemented into our own company, and always said that like we wanted a workplace like Google, you know. So I think there was a lot of inspiration for what we later created in our work culture as well.
What about things like you noticed there that you're like, hey, we're not going to bring this into our business? Was there anything?
I feel like there wasn't a direct connection because the experience wasn't unpleasant, so to speak. I feel like Google very much served a purpose, and there was nothing that I really disliked or could reflect on and say like that's not coming into my future. I think deep down I knew I was there in a temporary circumstance and I knew it was going to pass. So I think I appreciate it for what it was and then moved on with like a fond memory as opposed to, you know, a disgruntled ex-employee type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was like your biggest like personal like learning from Google?
I think it was just, I think it came a lot from my package and my remuneration, because my base salary, I actually ended up doubling through my commission. So it's like, for me, it sort of showed me that you get what you put in, essentially. You get out what you put in, and, you know, it was all on, as a lot of things that I feel I've experienced in my life, like if I want something to happen, it's on me. And I know there's a lot of other people like that as well, but like there's no handouts, there's no legs up, there's no advantages or anything like that. It's through pure hard work. And that's what I felt at Google was shown. It was like, this is on you. If you want this can happen. It's not written in the black and white, but you work it and you earn that commission and then you'll achieve your target essentially.
What was it like working around like, I'm assuming like so many A players at Google?
Well, that's the thing. It wasn't like there wasn't a lot of A players, which I think is a great thing because, you know, anything that anyone wants is theirs. If you realize once you get to, you know, top of food chains and whatnot that no one's any more special than anyone else. Yes, there's a few exceptions to the rule. Like, you know, there's highly intelligent people that are destined for greatness. I watched an interview with Elon Musk this morning and I just thought that's just an exceptional human being. Like he's just that 1%er sort of thing. And there are circumstances like that. But for the most part, when you rub shoulders with people that are hugely successful or people that are high up in companies and stuff, you realize like you're just as capable as what they are sort of thing. And I think that's a really good realization.
Yeah, I love that perspective.
Yeah.
Was there a time at Google where you're like, hey, like I want to start my own business, or starting your own business happened like after Google?
It happened really gradually. So basically my co-founder and I ran into each other after high school. We had gone to high school together. She'd lost a lot of weight. I was trying to lose weight. That was like story of my life throughout my late teens and early 20s is just always on a diet. And I asked her how she did it and she said, I've been weight training, I've been clean eating, come and train with me. So I ended up going to train with her at the gym and we became training buddies. So we trained like sort of day in, day out together. And then we sort of put our heads together and asked, you know, how can we take this to the next level? So we decided to do a bodybuilding show. And then from there, we did things really the hard way. It was like chicken, broccoli, fish, asparagus, egg whites, oats. That's just about it sort of thing. We ate like that for 6 months and then got on stage and didn't really look that good. So we kind of started to ask questions more about, well, why didn't this work for us? And I'd found this guy in our area in the Shire who had a master's in nutrition and he was giving his clients ice cream and they were losing weight. So I said, we've got to meet with him. Like he knows what he's doing. And that's when he started to explain to us the whole idea around the science of and the evidence-based nutrition principle of calories in versus calories out. So it was really the science that made sense. And for once we were like, after years of dieting, it was just like an aha moment. And we actually started working for him, under him, doing his meal plans according to the calories that he would calculate. And we were doing that on the side of our Google jobs before we then formed Equalution. It was actually the three of us at the time. And then he didn't want to do it anymore. So he gave us the keys and said, you guys can take it. So we ended up operating that again on the side of our Google jobs. And it was doing pretty well. So we took the plunge.
Let's talk about like side hustle, right? Like,
yeah.
I feel like it's very common in America, like Phil Knight from Nike.
Yeah,
he was an accountant when he started Nike.
Yeah.
Wozniak from Apple, he was at HP. And so a lot of these, I feel like really serious entrepreneurs, like they mitigate risk. They like start something on the side, get, validation.
Yeah.
And then they execute a bit and then they move on. I mean, was that the process for you guys? Like, hey, can we see if this can work? This will then enable us to then leave what we've got.
Yes, but it wasn't as calculated as what I think how it would go down, which is similar to that scenario today, just given my age and the fact that we were both young and naive. Like we were very much rolling with the punches. We weren't paying a mortgage. We weren't, paying rent or anything like that. We were living at home with a phone bill to pay every month. So I think the risk, your appetite for risk becomes a little greater, and I think it becomes easier to make those decisions. I think in today's day and age, like if someone came to me and said, look, I'm working this job, I earn this amount, I want to start this, it's going to cost me X, I would definitely tell them to work it side by side for a little bit until the validation is there to be able to support such a high risk decision, because most of the time people are in a job that if they weren't doing the side hustle, they'd happily retain or come back to, it's sort of like a plan B, but they're after the A. So I think, I think it sounds good to calculate along those lines, but for me, it happened in such a different way just given how young I was. But I definitely was entrepreneurial because I had another side hustle before that. So I used to hire, I worked for a sort of like a talent agency sort of thing. And they used to put me on particular brand jobs and activations to either hand out flyers or just be part of the overall branding. And cut a long story short, I was working for Anytime Fitness and I was handing out flyers. And at the end of my shift, I went back to the office to give the owner the flyers that were left over. And I said, just out of curiosity, like, how much are you paying for me an hour? And he said $65. I was getting 20. And I was like, Jesus. And I said, if I could get you girls that looked fit and whatnot, would you go through me as opposed to my agency? And he said yes. So I left the agency and I hired all my friends. My co-founder was actually one of them, and put them all on different Anytime Fitness clubs. And then that founder ended up getting me other gym owners as well. And I had like a whole conglomerate of Anytime Fitnesses, and the girls were handing out flyers for them. So I'd make a clip off them and then they'd retain the rest.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
For people listening to this that maybe they might, like, let's just say they're not working corporate and they're contemplating, let's say, getting into corporate and then potentially at some later stage starting a business. Do you recommend, I mean, obviously depending on the company you're going to go work for, like it's a good company, like do you recommend going through that pathway of like working for a corporate and then moving up to founding your own business?
Yes, if you don't know what that business is yet. But if you know, I would just say get cracking on it immediately. But it might be a case of, I think there's people out there now, and I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. I think maybe the passion's been planted and the want and the desires have been planted, which is always a really great start. But you can't really just sit down and ask yourself, what business am I going to start? I don't feel that gives you a good opportunity to start a company that grows, and one that's driven with passion and vision and, escalates in terms of like the levels up that it constantly continues to achieve. I just feel like it feels a bit unnatural to me. Okay. So I feel like if you're in a company and you've got an idea as to, what a corporate career path does look like, I would do that because you feel that that's the right thing for you, not because, you think it might be a good pathway to learn what you're going to learn and then go and start a business. And if you do have that idea for the business, I would say get cracking on it in some way, shape or form early on. So even for us, we didn't have clients, and our whole service was built around body transformation. So we just went out to friends and family and said, if we give you a diet plan, will you follow it? And can we get your transformation after that? And we did most of our transformations in the beginning for free. And it was just really, we needed that social proof. So I would say if you're sitting with something, whether it be a crawl before you walk scenario or just something that is like a fraction of what you're really wanting to execute, just do something, start somewhere and get that validation and the runs on the board.
Do you have any mentors or mentor that's like really or significantly impacted your life?
I've had various at different stages of my business journey, I've had people that have come in when the goal was to look closely at the P&L and say, what's working, what's not working, how can we optimize this, how can we increase profitability. I've had people that have come in during my exit when I needed a combination of logic and reason, and then also strategy as well. Like there's various people that have come in various stages of the journey. And I think that's a really important thing to remember is like you can need and then not need the same person throughout your journey. And I think, utilizing everyone who comes into your vicinity for exactly what you need at that time and not like overstaying your welcome and vice versa. I think it's important to cycle through as you go.
Yeah, to mix it up. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So like how did you go about recognizing early on like your strengths and weaknesses? Obviously you came from Google and then obviously now you're founding a company with your co-founder.
Yeah.
Like how did you go about understanding what you were really good at executing?
It's funny because it kind of all came like the things that I've been good at all my life sort of have manifested in other areas of life in business later on as well. So they're kind of things that I've always been really good at. I've always really understood human needs and therefore could build something that people loved and wanted and was sticky and whatnot. And then that kind of, manifested later on into like understanding product really well and like knowing how to create something for people, finding a product for your people rather than people for your product, essentially. That was sort of like how I worked. So I think it was always little things that like I saw signs of early on that I think once I tapped into them and started doing more of it, it became sort of something that was a bit of a skill.
Were you good at building teams?
Yes, I always have been. I've always been kind of like in leadership positions, like even as early as, being school captain and things like that. So there's always definitely been something there. And I think there were times where it was more prominent than not. Like there was, times that I wasn't feeling confident in myself. You could see that it was impeding on like my skill set and things. So I think a lot of it also comes down when you have a skill set that is revolved around people. It's also, you have to ask yourself the question as to how happy and fulfilled you are at that time, because if you're not, it will impact your overall result, I feel.
And how did you go about like, becoming a better leader as, time went on with Equalution?
It wasn't in Equalution, I don't think, that I became a great leader. I think it was after. So I think during the business, it was very reactive. So it was like, there wasn't from me as much like strategy as what I have now, because I wasn't as wise as what I am now, So since running that company, I've worked with over 170 businesses now. So you get quite good at what you do. Whereas when you have just the one, you only know the one way of doing things. You only know the one way of running a team, the one way of processes, operations, things like that. And now I feel I've learned from others, to be honest with you. Whenever I've hired since that company, I've always asked, what did you love about your previous company that you could potentially bring to this company? I like to learn about how other people are doing things. And I think I'm probably not as narrow-minded as what I was in Equalution. That's been sort of like a bit of a growth thing that's come after that.
Yeah. And like through Equalution, like how are you going about, as a founder, we're just extinguishing out, problems all the time, like constantly. How did you go about, problem solving and dealing with, these constant problems?
Can I be honest? We were so fortunate that it was just such a great business from the start. Like to say that there were, problem after problem, I'd be completely lying. Like it just truly wasn't like that. It was a really fortunate journey. And a lot of it was, I put it down to obviously, I look at what we created in the space that we created, and I think there was a lot of forward thinking, and I think there was a lot of risk that was taken in comparison to, in these days in the health and fitness space. So I definitely think we were the right two for the job, but we were also products of being in the right place at the right time and just having a really good stint. Like it was, if luck was on our side, it was really on our side.
Do you think because both of you like had experienced this problem with, weight,
yep.
You understood flexible dieting, you worked out the system, so you'd gone through the problem.
Definitely.
And you'd solved it. Because with me, for example, like I hadn't experienced the problem myself when I started my first business.
Yep.
I saw the problem and then obviously identified that and then started a business. But for you guys, both of you especially, you'd worked through it. Do you feel like that really helped you both just execute hard?
100%. It led us to creating a really amazing MVP. Like just that initial first version of us was spot on, So then it attracted more alike people that were experiencing or had experienced the same problem that we had. And I think that kind of played together with then turning into a really customer-centric brand where we listened to the people. It was kind of like we already had a pre-existing hypothesis or what we thought was going to work, and then you combine that with, well, guys, what do you think, community? And then it just was a really good match made in heaven.
Yeah. I mean, I just think the story is amazing. Like two of you, Google, both had this problem.
Yeah.
Both solved it together.
I know.
Both in this new venture. Like I think the PR around the story is so compelling. Like there's so much conviction.
It is, and it made leaving really hard, to be honest with you, because there was a lot of like imposter syndrome. There was a lot of fear around like that was a once in a lifetime. Will that ever happen again? Because I want to feel that again, but just on different terms, So I think it was a great story, and it has after that since become, opportunity after opportunity, but it really made leaving quite tricky.
When did you guys build the app?
So we started building I think we launched in around 2019.
Okay.
2020 perhaps, somewhere around there. And the actual process was about 2 years to get it up off the ground essentially, because we sort of tackled different operational issues using technology to begin with, and then we eventuated into creating that product.
How did you grow the business like pre-app? Like what was the key marketing strategy?
It was a lot of social proof. So the results, I think what we did worked. So I think that just showcasing that to the world was sort of a great way that we grew. Partnership was another one, whether it be through brand or whether it be through influencer. We were also products of a time where what we were I guess showcasing was pretty sexy. So to get influencers on board and to get that extra exposure, it was like merely water off a duck's back. Like it was really, really quite easy. And then we also formed like really great and cohesive community, and off the back of their great experience, they would just naturally share on social media. So we started to incentivize UGC and things like that. And it just became a little bit viral in its own way. Yeah.
So when you're leveraging client success, like was this paid advertising or was this all organic?
All organic.
Wow.
We didn't start paid advertising till I believe maybe 2020. Yeah.
Did things start to scale then hard?
Yeah. Do you know how paid ads had that era where it was just like really good bang for your buck?
Yeah.
Not really what it's like today, but yeah, we were on the back of that. It was really successful.
And did like any of your competitors have a formula that was similar to what you guys had in the market?
No, and it's funny because I've since been asked about, competition and what I thought and what I saw and whatnot. We were so tunnel vision, like just focused on what we were doing. We didn't really look left and right, nor were we really intimidated by what anyone else was doing in the market. In fact, we saw probably a lot try and do what we were doing. And still to this day, like some of the leaders, there's a lot of similarities and whatnot. But at the time, we were definitely in a league of our own, definitely.
It's like blue ocean.
Yeah, it felt very just like we were swimming in our own lane.
Doing your own thing.
Yeah.
Was anyone that specifically like inspired you as a leader, like as a CEO, founder in the marketplace? Just could have been in a different industry that you used to look at?
Yeah, I really love Payal from ClassPass. I thought she was fantastic. We actually heard her speak at the Startup Grind. And I think any female in tech really inspired us because it was pretty unheard of at the time that we started delving into that space. So I think that was always really inspiring to see other people do what essentially you're trying to do.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Did you spend time like in the US?
Yes, we did. So when we decided to take Equalution full time, we actually quit Google and we took a one-way ticket to Silicon Valley, and we thought that was where we were going to build the app. We were very naive, but we thought we were going to do one of three things: either find a CTO, find an investor, or just learn how to build an app, because we had no idea. And we did neither one of those three things, but we did go to the Startup Grind, and that's where we heard from so many founders that you would pretty much never get in one room these days. It was the founder of Uber, Lyft, ClassPass, Twitter, all in one room.
Wow.
And we just felt a lot of synergy. We just were thinking they saw a problem, they've got people, they have the runs on the board, they've got validation, and they're just scaling it through technology. And we just kind of saw this whole roadmap from there and went home and got to work.
That's a lineup of founders.
It is. It was very inspiring.
So how long were you guys in San Fran for?
Probably about, not specifically San Fran,
Okay.
but in the US for about 4 months.
4 months.
Yeah. And that's how long our money lasted. And then we ran out of money and we had to come home.
It's inspiring there, eh?
It is. It very much is. And to be honest with you, we got wandering eyes. Like we started toying with, should we do a salad bar? Because they had salad bars over there with the calories and macros and whatnot. We started thinking about all that, but we really quickly learned that we should stay focused on the thing that we're really good at. But you kind of get a bit distracted there.
A lot of ideation in the USA, right? When you go there.
Yeah, definitely. But no, it's a cool place. And even today, I think, if I ever wanted to shake things up a bit, I'd just go to one of those conferences over there, because the lineup is usually like nothing you'd usually ever see. So,
it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
What about like, I heard Brian Chesky from Airbnb get interviewed and he was talking about like what you don't get taught before starting a company, like there's no playbook, is like around isolation and loneliness. And he says like whether, it's a smaller company of like 10 employees or you've got a few thousand, like it's just, that's what you deal with. And I could resonate with that myself.
Yeah.
Like how do you feel about that?
I agree. I think my main thing that I've learned in my time in business so far is that a lot of people teach you how to start a business and, you know, how to scale a business. There's a lot out there now that there wasn't necessarily years ago, but a lot of people don't tell you how to leave one and what that looks like and how it's supposed to feel the entire way, and when it doesn't feel like that, what you're supposed to do and whatnot. So I think that's been my biggest learning. Like I would say that was exiting was a complete gray area for me and something that I had to learn as I was going through it essentially, but it really was birthed off like a gut intuition, and I don't think people make you aware that might be the case. You might find yourself in this situation in the future, which, yeah, I mean, it's inevitable for everyone who has a business. One day you're not going to have a business, whether you exit successfully or whether, you know, someone buys you out and you stay working in it as an employee, whatever that looks like, there will be a day where it doesn't look like today, you know? So I think that there's not a lot of awareness around that.
Let's talk about the exit, right? Like when you, like at what stage were you thinking about exit in the company?
Really not until the day I left. But previous to that, there was probably signs in my attitude, my mood, my enthusiasm for getting up and going to work, and how I thought of the future. For once, I wasn't seeing a pathway. I was just, it's kind of like I got to the end of the road and I just couldn't see beyond that. So there was definitely a lot of signs, but there wasn't action until the day that I left, and that was pretty much a mutual decision between my co-founder and I that I wasn't happy and I should probably take some leave to think about what's going to happen after this. And then my first day of leave, I took 3 months leave, and my first day of leave, I'm like, I'm done. It's time.
This is right.
Yeah, this is so right. This is so right. And it was funny because at the time, I had a lot of knocks on my door. It was like, oh, you know, do you have time to help me with my business? Or I'm starting this, I've got this idea. I got approached by a supplement company to take a really sort of short-term CMO opportunity. And I just thought, this is what I needed, something to walk into. I'm not walking into nothing, and I had something to walk into. So it definitely made the decision a lot easier. I just felt like there was light at the end of the tunnel.
It's interesting, like you're at Google, you had something to walk into, and then as you're exiting, you had something else to lead into.
Yeah, definitely. So it had passed its expiry date, and I think the opportunities became more exciting than my business. So that was a really big sign for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it like being a female founder?
I think we are special. I do. I think that we are really special. There is a combination of logic and empathy and just this inherent understanding for people and problems. I think there's like a softness to leadership that's brought by being a female, and don't get me wrong, that's relatively stereotypical. But I think no matter if you're a masculine female like myself or not, you sort of, you know, you might shed a tear, you might get incredibly passionate about something, but there's a lot of emotion behind it. And I don't think that's a bad thing when it comes to leadership.
Did you have like a good cohort of like female founders that you like got together with? Or
Not really, no. There wasn't like sort of a network at that time. I feel like there's more out there now to, like, I've connected with a lot more founders and female founders at that since leaving the company and working with so many businesses. And of course, like, I've had a lot of clients now who are the same. I've even got some of my clients coming to my wedding next month as well. So I've formed really close relationships with a lot of founders. But at the time, I do look back on that period of time, and it was an amazing 8 years, and there was a lot achieved, but I was in a bubble. It was just me in the Equalution bubble. I wish I could have reached out a little bit more and even just asked for help. That was another thing. I didn't ask for help until the final days. I remember I had a really great accountant / mentor at the time, and he was like a tycoon, like property tycoon, investor tycoon. Like everything he touched, he was good at. And I called him when I left, and I was like, what now, basically? But I just kind of wish that maybe, you know, I had the age and the wisdom to be able to have sought that knowledge throughout the journey, because I would have been a much better leader, much better operator for it. I think asking for help is a really great tool.
Were you happy running Equalution a lot of the time?
No, I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy because I didn't have a life outside of that business. And I for that reason, I didn't know myself. I didn't experience a lot. You know, it was, that business was my whole existence. And a lot of people ask now, like, would you go back and change it? Absolutely not, because I've lived a really great life now in my 30s because of what I did in my 20s. It was like the work that I put in my 20s has now paid off in my 30s, and I know where I'm going, and I love what I do. And if I didn't, I'd know exactly, it's time for a pivot, off you go. So yeah, I think it's played a big role, but at the time was a happy no. That's a bit sad.
I can resonate. So building like businesses now for you is like work-life balance. Is that important?
It is, but I also think there's a time and a place for everything. Like I shared with you before our chat today, I've just started building another software, and we started that about 2 months ago, and I can already feel myself creeping into the hibernation zone. Like I know it's time, but I also feel like it's time, in that since I've left my company, I've found the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. I didn't when I was working at Equalution. I've traveled the world with him. We've bought a house together. We've invested together. There's a lot of boxes that I've checked, and I feel fulfilled and satisfied, and I'm ready to go again. So there's that as well. Whereas I feel like with Equalution, I maybe have had wandering eyes for the life that I wasn't living, that I felt I should have been living.
Got it.
I think that made it tricky.
Like knowing what you know now, you're in a relationship.
Yeah.
You obviously weren't prior to that. What's it like building a business now, like having that support on a personal level?
It's a game changer. It's a game changer. The happiness and the fulfillment and the perspective, I think, are just 3 things that I just didn't have before. It's funny because when you're doing things on your own in business, like there's times where you feel like the world is caving in on you and there's just no way out. And then when you're experiencing it with someone who knows you through and through, knows your vision, your mission, and loves you, and also has that logic outside of the situation brain, it just the perspective it gives, like, why don't you just this? Oh, okay. Just it's someone to lean on essentially. And yeah, I feel like it's been a game changer.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So building new business now.
Yeah.
Like, what are you not bringing into it? Whether it could be leadership, it could be management related, it could be strategic related. Like, what are you not bringing in from your old business into the new business?
I think I'm just walking in a different person, which means that my ways of doing things are different. I'm not as rigid. I'm more empathetic, understanding, a listener rather than a talker. I think that's the big thing that has changed in me. I was always the one that was doing the talking and running the show and all that kind of stuff. And I think you can be an active leader whilst also actively listening as well. I think there's a lot of people that have a lot of good things to say if you just stop and give them, the time of day to pivot things along your side. So I think that will probably change for me.
How important, has it been, hiring, really exceptional people, compared to, I guess, whether you call it a B player, what's been your experience, hiring, really excellent people compared to, let's say, just above ordinary?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I haven't really experienced that side of growing a team just yet, because when I left Equalution, I was the oldest in the team. Everyone was really young, and it was really suitable for that brand, that culture, and that product and the job that we were doing, But I think now I would probably seek a little bit more, a few more strategic thinkers, because I'm the type of leader that I want that now. Whereas I don't think I was ready for that back then. I think I wanted to be the smartest in the room, which, you kind of stop and think, oh, shit, that sounds like you had a real ego. Well, I think I did, So I feel now I would probably look for skill and experience. I recently, a company that I'm on the board for, they just hired someone from another really big company in a marketing role, and I was like, go for her. She would, she's been around the block. She's worked in that company. You want to know exactly how they did things. They're where you want to be, and I love that now. Whereas I think I wasn't ready for that in Equalution.
Got it. How have apps, I'm not that familiar with apps, but how have they changed today where you see them compared to when you launched?
Well, when we launched, I think the market wasn't so competitive in any area of apps. There was sort of leaders in every sort of space. You have gaming leaders, you have health leaders, you have fitness leaders. So there was real standouts. Whereas I think today it's anyone's game. Anyone can build a really good app if it's focused on that stickiness and that UI UX experience for the customer. I think it has to be really, really customer centric and not just a utility, you know? But I think the combination of the two is really important because ultimately you want it to be a thing that people feel like they're tied to and they can't live without. So I think just creating an experience where you can kind of harvest that will give you a good app.
And like, what's the process of like implementation of like growing it in stage one? Like just getting some form of awareness?
I think a lot of it comes down to budget. Like you really have to kind of ask yourself, what minimal version of this can I put out there and get some sort of revenue to be able to go back in with the product? So, you know, if I had a dozen features, I would ask myself, what does this actually need? I'd do a nice to have and a must have list, and I would ensure that the must have list could generate me revenue. So if I then was looking at getting 100 subscribers, they were paying $189 a month, I've got 19K MRR and I could go back in, you know, and reinvest in the app and then progressively add those features on. And I think there's also an art with feature balancing where like you don't want to have too many bells and whistles at the start because you don't want it to be overwhelming as a new product. So there's sort of a bit of a balance of, I think there's a bit of a strip down that you do when you're looking at what do I ultimately want to launch versus what is the best thing to launch now.
Yeah, got it. Are you getting personally like very involved and deep into product?
Yes, yeah. I'm doing everything at the moment. Whereas before my job in Equalution when we were building the app was to branding, marketing, and bringing in the money to be able to fund the app. And I didn't really have a lot of product development involvement aside from approvals, testing, feedback, etc. I wasn't sort of so active in that process, but now I'm very active in that process. And now I wish I kind of did more in Equalution because I'm quite good at it.
Yeah, and how's that process been? Like, has it been pretty natural for you?
It's been really natural. But the other thing too is like I'm making this investment myself and I kind of have a budget to work with. And I sometimes think to myself, imagine if you weren't able to make that decision without that capital, like it would be really kind of tricky. So I'm definitely in a much more blessed position to be able to be that operator as opposed to just someone that's like just completely new in business and just starting this with, you know, life savings.
Yeah. So you're bootstrapping it completely?
Yeah.
And then is the plan then to then raise capital? No. Nice.
Not yet anyway. Never say never, but I just feel like it will be cash positive from the start. So I should be able to keep going back in.
Nice. And is there another co-founder?
No, it's just me.
And you're very happy just rolling solo?
I am, but I would like to bring on strategic partners. So whether that be partners for brand enhancement, whether that be partners for like endorsement, or even just partners, you know, they can bring something to the table that I have gaps. I definitely have gaps. I'm not going to sit here and say that I can wear a dozen hats super, super well. I do some with 100% and I do others with like 60% to get the job done because it's not my strong suit. Nice. But I would love to bring in more people that have more well-rounded wisdom to get the company where it needs to be. But I have no desire to find a 50-50 partner again.
Love it.
Yeah.
What do you think about like where you are now in terms of just the world, business, technology? Like what's in your mind? Like
for myself?
Yeah, like just like are you thinking about like is there specific technology? Are you thinking about like marketing like what do you like to think about?
I think something that really excites me is technology in general, and that what can be done via 7 steps, 3 platforms can be done in one if you're an innovator that's looking to change that space. You know, I think that's what really excites me. And looking back now at my journey, even what I'm doing now makes a lot of sense. I've kind of had the problem under my nose for a lot of years. When I had my agency, I had a lot of online coaches and personal trainers within our clientele. And I saw the problem sort of like firsthand. So I think something that excites me is always asking like, how can this be done better? And I'm always led back to technology. And as much as I'm a girl that like honors and loves human connection, and I think there's going to be always a place for that. I often get asked about, what do you think about AI? I'm like, we'll never replace person to person, attention, contact, emotions, all that kind of stuff, exchange. But I'm pretty excited about, you know, creating opportunities that can streamline and optimize the way that we do things through technology platforms. And even the companies that I've invested in, they're all working towards that same vision. So I feel as though that's my thing.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Are you feeling like super prepared starting this third business?
Yes. very much so. I feel like a lot of things make sense, you know? So I think the learnings, you know, it's, you can never put your money on like this is 100% guaranteed, but I feel very confident about it. And I also have a much, I'm fulfilled in my life. So there's less of an aggression towards going hard and going, you know, throwing it all in and having your ego stroked along the way and things like that. I'm happy at the pathway that I see for this too.
Are you fearful around like execution at all?
No, not at all. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You just go again.
I love that.
Yeah.
Do you think like if you weren't in the financial position you are now, you would be fearful around execution?
Probably because I think, you know, even now having had my exit, like I'm very aware that it's not this like endless supply of money. I'm careful. I'm really, really careful. So I feel if I even didn't have that, I'd be even more careful. I wasn't careful at Equalution at all. We were just sort of like, yep, this is what we've got to do. You've got to go all in. But that was also, as I said, subject to age at the time and being a bit naive maybe.
Different circumstance of your life.
Completely, yeah.
For anyone listening to this who is looking to start a business, you know, they're passionate about the idea, they might have experienced the problem or they're looking to solve a problem. Like what's your advice to them like getting started around just, I think mindset around giving it a go?
I think, look, if I could put it down to anything, ultimately at the end of the day, it's just not giving two fucks what other people think, really. If you fall on your face, it's a great lesson. You can get back up and you're a different person for doing that fall as opposed to previous of doing it. So I feel as though a lot of our fears are surrounding what others will think and it's not their life. So I just think just go for it, you know?
Were you like always, like were you born with this like resilience, perseverance, or did you develop it over time? Like,
no, I think I was born with it.
You're born with it.
Always been a bit weird.
Yeah, because I think some people do struggle with like rejection.
Yeah.
Whether, you know, it's trying to raise capital for that idea, or something goes wrong, someone doesn't believe in their idea.
Yeah.
Like I got told like 6 times when I was looking to start my company, like, hey, you're going to fail. This concept doesn't make sense. And like I could have listened to that and then would never have started. So like I feel like some people just, they struggle with it.
Yeah, I think also when you really understand how much can come out of something not working, and by not working, it's really never not working. It's always just some sort of redirection. But just because things didn't happen the way that you thought that they would, it doesn't mean that they have worked against you or it was a failure. It was simply just you had to turn and maneuver the other way sort of thing. So I think when you start to have that outlook on failure in the like sort of typical form, I think your perspective completely changes. You know, like I even look back on the agency that I had post Equalution. Was it my best decision? Maybe not. You know, I essentially jumped into another 50-50 partnership. I jumped into an agency model, which anyone who's run an agency knows it's really freaking tricky. It did really well, and I think that was sort of the run on the board that I needed after leaving such a successful company. But I knew it wasn't forever, and it's like, well, why would you start that if you knew that you were going to get out of it pretty quickly, you know? But then again, it simply got me to here. And in doing that agency, I worked with all my end users for the new app that I'm building.
It's amazing.
So it's like, it makes so much sense. I think nothing is a failure. It's always just there's a lot that you can take out of everything if you just don't care what people think.
I love that.
Yeah.
Like with founders you've met across your time, like successful founders, are there like specific like character traits that you've recognized over time?
Yeah. You know what? It's funny. Something that I've really noticed is that a lot of super successful people are pretty ruthless. Like they will put their vision before even people sometimes. And I have sort of learnt to embrace a little bit more staunchness in the past couple of years in like when you want something, there are means to go after it and it might look aggressive at some points in time. You know what I mean? Like you never kind of hurt or compromise like anyone's feelings or whatnot, but it's just more so the avenues that you might take. Like it might mean missing out on something else and whatever it might be, sacrifice, for example. But I've noticed that a lot of successful people that I've seen, that I've looked to or whatnot, have in some way in their journey taken, you know, a pretty ruthless approach. Been pretty sure about what they wanted and gone after it.
Yeah, I mean, you strike me as pretty staunch anyway, so it'll be
I
good
think
to
my
see
partner
how
says that too.
But when you elevate that, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, becoming a founder, I feel like, a lot of it is, I think, mindset. You see some of these founders build these remarkable companies and they're not a lot of the time any more intelligent than other people. I feel like they've just, as you said the word vision before, like they're just going in a certain direction.
Yeah.
They bring they bring it to the people.
Yeah.
They set the expectation, the tone. They get everyone on board and why we're going there, and then everyone just drives that way. I mean, how important do you think it is around just being so relentlessly focused on that vision?
I think it's everything, and it's like at the end of the day, it's actually not about you. Like most people who are executing a vision, it's for the greater good of some, humanity or a minority or whatever, but like it's a service. It's a service to people. And I feel like they have had this feeling of I am the right person to execute this, but it's actually got nothing to do with your needs, wants, how this strokes your own ego. It's really about bringing this thing that is going to benefit these other people. And that's where I've always found meaning in my missions is I feel like, whether it was the agency that was serving small businesses, whether it was Equalution that was serving people that desired to lose weight and probably had tried every diet under the sun their whole lives, like you have to take yourself out of the equation, and it's actually not about you. You were just the person that was meant to execute this.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, starting a business, like I always tell people starting my first company was like my biggest pill for personal transformation. Like I saw all my blind spots, obviously excelled in certain areas, but I felt like it was this pill that I swallowed and I just went through this amazing transformation, very difficult at times. Yeah. Did you experience that when you started Equalution around the evolution of yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think there was a lot of stages where I didn't really like myself and I didn't really like where my life was heading, and it was very surface level and it was probably a little bit materialistic and a bit superficial, and it just wasn't who I am. And it was so funny because even after I left that company, I ended up going back to the area close by where I came from, and it just I feel like I had a hot minute where I was not myself. So I think it taught me to come back to my roots a little bit more and trust that gut, that wisdom, and just be myself, be authentic, and not sort of morph into what I was around at that time.
I love it. Well, Jade, thanks for the conversation.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Congrats on your exit.
Thank you.
And wishing you all the best on your new venture.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks.